65. 65. You were 0. Or was it 2? Say he was 2. I was 65.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. We have a good crowd here today. There's a sign-in sheet going around if you want to put your name on that. That tells us how many people attended. We also have a guest book over here on this piano under a couple of Karen's pastels. And I'm excited to have Karen here today. I've watched her artwork for a long time and just happened to notice that she was living in Buffalo. How long have you lived in Buffalo now? 10 years? So I reached out to her, but then I found out yesterday somebody had said, oh, you should go show there. So I just like to keep an eye out on artists who are worth mentioning and notable people, talented. We have a lot of talented people here of all ages. And I really like Karen's work because she works in lots of different mediums. Some of it, most of it's just really realistic. We like to call that figurative things in the art world as opposed to abstract. But I really appreciate your color and texture. You can really tell that she puts a lot of love into it and has a whimsical side. You know, it's not all just realism, but it's also impressionistic and uses brush strokes and colorful layers. So thank you to Karen for coming today and lending us her artwork for a couple months. This will be up through November. And I'm excited to hear more about you because I've seen you work, and that's the thing, a lot of artwork, we just see what's on the surface. When you see art, you don't always get to know who the artist is or hear about their life or what inspires them. So this is a fun opportunity to get to know people better. And your artwork, I think, tells a lot about you too, because you look very prolific for one thing, meaning she needs a lot of work. And it's good for artists to have a place to hang it because it piles up and we can't stop doing it. So, you know, the space for us is, it's welcome. So thanks, Karen, and we're excited to have you and appreciate your work.
Thank you, Danica. Thank you for inviting me to show here. I'm so grateful for a place to show my art and an opportunity to share a little bit about my journey as an artist and as a person. Some of this work I haven't ever shown before. It's new. So I can point out what's new, but maybe later. You can ask me questions after I'm done. But I don't usually talk about myself. Even friends may not know my whole background. I was born in Billings. So, my dad was a carpenter and a minister. And so we moved about every 3 years. Probably the longest place we lived was Roundup, and that was 6 years. I lived in Montana, Lodgegrass, Montana, Hardin, and Roundup, and that's where I graduated high school. And in Wyoming, I lived in Grable and in Sheridan. And then I had a stint in Rapid City too. So, and we had a little detour over into Iowa, and my dad's allergies acted up, so that didn't last very long. So eventually I ended up in Spokane, Washington, in a graphic art program. And then in 1978, I married and moved to Phoenix. And I worked in a big studio, about 100 artists were in this studio, and we did yellow paint ads. And I was in the line art division. So that was the first time I ever was able to call myself an artist. Before I was an art student. So that was really big for me. And this was a nationwide yellow page ad company. And of course, we all know that that's pretty much obsolete now. Later in Gillette, when we moved to Gillette, I freelanced and I taught drawing lessons and I took portrait commissions, all while I raised 2 boys. By 1998, the graphics art world was moving all to computers, and I shifted my focus to portraiture full-time. And in 91, we moved to Upton. And then after a divorce, I met my husband, Bill, who's sitting right over here, and I met him when he commissioned a portrait. And we married in 97, and for 18 years, we raised cattle and sheep on his family ranch on Wind Creek, and that's located between Moorcroft and Sundance and Upton. The ranch life had a big influence on my art. I was not only, intrigued with all the horses, but I got a lot of portrait commissions of country people with their horses. So that was really quite an education. Because I was, a preacher's daughter, so I did not know anything about ranch life. We sold the ranch in 2014, and we moved to Buffalo. So why do I make art? From what I have observed, my purpose in making art seems a little different from most artists. I believe that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he made man and woman in his own image. If you think about it, what's the first thing we're told about this God? He created. And what do we humans do? We create. I love sculpting. If I could keep a sculpture together, I'd be a sculptor, but they always fall apart. So I stayed with painting. But as much as I've always loved making art from childhood, I've also known that most everything we do, as Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes, vanity and chasing the wind. Realistically, all the amazing things people create will eventually turn to dust. I know that's a sad thought, but it's true. Even so, I know art has a valid place in this world. Still, I've wrestled with its value in God's eyes. Does it have eternal value? Does it reach beyond this world? One thing I know for sure, I was made to worship God, to draw attention to who he is. Excuse me. In him, there is truth, there is life, there's majesty, there's creativity, provision, peace, and beauty. There is justice and mercy. There's power and perfection. There's wisdom and there's order. There is variety. There is excitement. There's joy. There's intensity. There's light. There's balance. And I could go on. So when I paint, if I bring even a little glimpse of those things, those qualities of God, as an act into my work as an act of worship, then I believe it has eternal value in his eyes. The truth is, any work we do can be done and rightfully should be done for the glory of God. For over 30 years, my focus was portraits. I learned that a well-done portrait can bring comfort to a grieving heart, provide a family heirloom, and capture the fleeting charm of a 2-year-old. And there was a show that I did I did a couple of shows where I collected art, the portraits from the past clients, so that I could do a show in the complex of all the portraits that I could collect. And I was asking all these people, can I borrow it? Can I borrow it? And I had done this one portrait. Sorry. for a lady who lost her dad. And she told me no. And I get it. I've done over 200 portraits, and I can honestly say that each one of those portraits held a unique value to its owner, and other kinds of artwork just can't come close to it. If the words of Solomon are correct, and I believe they are, then much of life is either tedious or grievous. A portrait can remind us of our connections to those we cherish and give us comfort and bring us joy. I decided when we moved here to break free and experiment a little bit. Portraiture is very precise, and it is a lot of work. So I thought, I want to have some fun. Bold colors and textures in acrylic were about as opposite to my pastel portrait style as I could get. So that's where I started. One of my repeat portrait customers noticed the change because I was posting these weird paintings online. And she commissioned a large buffalo, and she said, you know, I love animals, I love these animals, but the colors are just not what I want in my house. I want bright colors. So I love that you're putting these colors in these animals that I love. So I did a lot of animals for her. I think it was probably 6. And they were big portraits of animals. And that was the beginning, because I, after that, had quite a few more commissions of these kinds of paintings. My goal in a painting, along with glorifying God, is to make you stop and look for a moment. You could say I paint effects as much as I paint subjects. And if it draws me in, and I'm always looking for that when I'm working on a painting, is it drawing me in? And if it draws me in, I know I'm on the right track with that painting. The senior center has wonderful walls, and I was able to bring a mix of work. Some pieces are for sale, and some are personal favorites. When galleries show and sell my work, I usually don't meet the buyer, and I don't get to see people's reactions because I'm not there. And so that takes some of the joy out of it. So this is special. The painting over there of the tree with the ocean behind it has quite a story. My dad passed away in 2014, and he liked to paint. He would stay up late at night and paint. And he hadn't finished this one, so his widow gave it to me to finish. So that's a team effort, that one. Very, very special to me. Finally, if you haven't figured it out already, oh, and I want to mention that one over there. That was when we were on the ranch, and I was out with Bill. I was sitting in the truck, and he was feeding the cattle, and there was this spring storm, and the snow was sticky. You know the kind of snow I'm talking about. It was in May, and the snow was going sideways, and every cow had a white side and a black side. And so that's where that painting came from. If you haven't figured me out already, I am a believer in Jesus Christ. If God were to give me what I deserve, it would be hell. But by his mercy, I've been rescued through faith in the sacrifice and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And now I possess eternal life. My life and my work belong to him. He actually bought me with his own life. Any good that comes from what I do is because of his generosity to me. So it's so very true, and there's no doubt in my mind that the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ has the power to bring us into a right relationship with our Creator who loves us. If you're curious about this, it's three things I want to mention before I'm done. Number 1, understand you have a sin problem and that you cannot solve it by being a good person. A lot of us think that we can. Well, I'm good. Well, God expects perfection, and none of us can do that. So confess your sins to God and ask Him to forgive you and cleanse you. And if you ask Him that, He will. Believe then and trust that Jesus Christ paid the penalty of eternal death that was meant for you. Eternal life is a free gift. And that's all we need to know. He does the changing. We don't need to change. That said, I want to thank you again for your kind attention today. And thanks, Danica, for this great opportunity. And please take your time looking around if you haven't already. And the best part of sharing art is getting to hear what others see in it. So I can open it up to questions if you have any questions. Otherwise, any questions? Yes, Kathy?
I don't know if it's a question, but let people know that you have grandkids on the wall over there.
Oh, yes, the little girl in the water, playing in the water, that's my granddaughter, Lydia. I call it Lydia's kitchen. And I don't know what's over here. Oh, that's my dad as a child. I took it from an old black and white picture of him. And then the other one is another picture of Lydia, same time. She was playing in the mud at the reservoir over there in North Dakota.
When you do a portrait or a painter, do you do it from live subjects or more photographs? Which one do you like to do it best from?
When I was growing up, I did live portraits. I loved to paint or to draw, with pencil, and I drew my friends. And I remember when I was in my 20s, I was a craft lady at the camp all summer long, and I had so many faces around me, these kids, and they all wanted to sit for me, and I drew them. And I wanted to keep the portraits, though they wanted to have them. So I guess one kid decided he wanted all of them, and it went away. I wish I had it. It was a whole sketchbook full of live, and I did do some of that years ago in the New Life Wesleyan show. I sat up and I had people sit for me, and it's very stressful, because this person is not very comfortable. And one lady had a hot flash while I was doing it. I could see the beaded sweat all over her face. Poor lady. She held really still though. But no, most of the time when I do a professional portrait, I'll take pictures because it's torture for all of us if I don't.
Yeah, I can see that. Thank you.
Yes.
Karen, you're so accomplished in so many medium, but what is your favorite medium?
That's a tough question because I have a medium that I'm best at, and that's portrait. That's the pastels. I do best with that, but I don't necessarily call it my favorite. It's easy for me, but it's so messy. It's just, I get it everywhere. And then I draw things and it's all over my carpet, and by the time I'm done, it's all over my face. So I like acrylics because it's cleaner and it's easier to wash up and stuff. But oils too are easier to use as far as to get the effects that I want. They're easier to blend, but there are some really accomplished artists in acrylics. There's a way to do it. I just haven't, mastered that yet. So a lot of times I'll start a painting in acrylic and then I'm going, I need oil. And you can actually put oil over acrylic. And as long as the acrylic's nice and dry, the oil is fine over it. Just don't try the opposite. It doesn't work. So, and pencil, I love charcoal. I cut my teeth on pencil because we grew up kind of poor, and that was one thing I could do because we had pencils and papers. We could afford that, so I got pretty good. Yes.
Would we do it justice if you didn't mention the awards that you've won, contests that you've won? I know you don't like very much.
Well, I used to enter the fair over in Gillette. That's when I started entering contests, and that was like easy to win. But then, and I used to paint with my boys in the summertime. Let's get some artwork for the fair. And they made out like bandits in the art department. You know, my younger son bought a bike back when bikes were $50. So, but lately, you know, I don't enter contests that are far away. I don't like sending things, so I kind of try to keep it local. And the one contest I've entered a few times is the, yeah, that's my unknown caller. Anybody have that? Let me get rid of them. I forgot to put my phone on silent. But anyway, I entered the national contest at the Sage, and that's a national open, it's open to the nation. And so they get people from all over the country. I've trained that. And I've made it in, I don't know how many times, three times maybe. And got People's Choice a couple of times. And then just in 2004 though, is my bragging rights. Yeah, that's what I meant. 2024. My bragging rights here is winning the best of show for that in 24. But you know, it's hard for me to even make it into that show, let alone win best of show. So I was like on cloud 9 for that one. And let's see. Yes.
Is there a story behind the life in the buffalo?
Well, that was one of my experiments. I was like, I want to paint a bunch of clouds. I want to see if I can paint clouds. I'm not a cloud painter. You know, I'm always wanting to try something new, you know, see if I can do it. And that was an attempt at clouds. And then I, you know, thought I wanted a buffalo on a cliff. So I practiced rocks, you know, I learned some things with that one. There's texture behind it, which was another thing that I was playing with at the time. So, you know, I just like to paint those colorful buffaloes, and I thought I'd just put him on a cliff, you know. And this one is real set. Actually, this is the actual print of the colorful buffalo that I was referring to before the lady saw and wanted a commission. And so that's a print of it, but it was a lot bigger, the one I did for her. Anything else? Yes.
So you were drawing when you were a kid. When did you start painting? I might have missed that. If you
Question. I drew with a pencil and charcoal up until about 1987 when I discovered pastels. And pastels, you could say, is like painting because it's color, but you know, it's considered drawing, but they're colored chalk is what pastels is. And so I just, you know, started getting into color with pastels and loved it. And that's what I used for my portraits over there. And I think that's about all the pastels. That buffalo right there is a pastel. But when I probably first time I actually, no, I lied. I started painting with oils in college. You know, I took a class. I in graphics back in the olden days before computers, they taught you how to paint in graphics. You know, they taught you how to illustrate, and you used a T-square and a triangle to do all your lines, and you know, we did everything the hard way. But we had to take oil painting classes and watercolor painting classes. That was the first time I did that. But professionally, I started switching over to oils, you know, after I had done about 100 portraits in pastel. I would offer it to people, you know, but I wasn't as good with oils as I was pastels. Yeah.
Did you do any watercolor?
Watercolor, I took a class. Actually, that portrait of my grandfather is a watercolor.
I think it's in that other room, right to the left.
Right to the left.
Just inside that door there.
I have about 2 or 3 watercolors that I feel like I did successfully. And and I love them. I love the way they turned out. But still, if you put a color where white is supposed to be, you have a problem. And so even on Grandpa, I used a black and white photo of him dressed for church. And he was an old sheep rancher, but he would get dressed up and he'd always wear pants that were too big for him and wear a tight belt and a hat that didn't quite sit on his head right. And so, but there was a spot on his shirt, you probably can't even see it because I very skillfully covered it up with some gouache, which is like a watercolor, opaque watercolor. Because there was a spot I had done that with. So, yeah, it's not my favorite. It isn't forgiving enough. Some of my paintings have layer and layer and layer and layer after layer after layer of paint because I don't like it. I'm changing it. I don't like it. And instead of scraping it off, a lot of times I'll just let it dry and then go over it. And I've ruined paintings like that. I definitely have. They're in my closet. We struggle. We artists do struggle. Anything else you can think of?
Somebody over there had their hand raised.
Anybody?
I think people need to know your website and where else they can find your art in this area.
Okay, I have artwork in, thank you, Kathy. I have artwork in the Hitchin Post. And Hugh Jennings has been so great. I'll take artwork down to him and say, I'm ready to switch some things out. And he'll say, no, I'll keep what I've got. I'll just take that. And so he's got quite a few of my works. He's got about 17 so far. And when I first got in there, he was selling them right along. Things were slowing down a little bit this year. But he's really been great. And I have artwork over in the Expressions Gallery. And they've been good to me. I did have a lot of art over in Dayton. Gina Donner, her gallery on Main. And she, when I first approached her, she goes, no, we only take people from Dayton. And I said, well, can you look at my work? And she said, I'll take you. So that was, you're close enough. And she really was able to sell. She was a blessing to me. I think she's got a background in sales, so she knows how to land it. And I sold a lot through her gallery, but she recently closed it. So that's a bummer. Yeah. But I also have a little bit of work over in Sheridan in the Mainframe Gallery. They don't have much room. Both of those boys are artists themselves, and they do framing mostly, but they approached me actually and said, can we put some of your work in here? So I felt really honored to be in there. So,
How long do you spend on a painting, I guess, size-wise, something like that? How long does it take?
a
As far as
painting,
weeks or hours, however you want to break it down.
a painting can take me a day if there aren't any bumps in the road, but there are always bumps in the road. Yeah, so it can take months if I'm not happy with it, and I keep working it and overworking it, and then I overwork it, and then I rid it. So, but yeah, it just depends on what I'm working with, and it really depends on my problems I end up with. Yeah.
I know many artists explore having their work reproduced as prints. Have you explored that with yours?
This is a print.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I have done those canvas prints, and they're way more reasonable than my originals. And I also do my own paper prints at home. I can go as wide as 13 inches with my printer. And so I can make 13 wide as long as it gets too. So. And I sell those. And I've also made put my images on 5x7 note cards, blank ones, and I sell those. I'll be over here at the Playhouse next weekend, I think, with a lot of cards with my work on them and mugs too. The mugs are beautiful. I, sent away for those and they just do a wonderful job with the mugs.
How many hours a week do you work
Ask my husband.
now? It's like a full-time job.
Yeah, it's easily a full-time job. She goes over 40, 50 hours a week.
And you frame your own work, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my studio has all the stuff you need to frame something, which is mat cutters and all that. And I'm tripping over frames all the time. I have glass. And then because I work in so many different mediums, I've got an area where I do pastels. I got this area where I make the prints, and then the framing area, and then oils. I keep those separate, and then I have a whole bunch of acrylic over here. It's quite a mess, but it's a happy mess. I clean it up once in a while just for my own safety.
That's why I say if you have a mess, that means you're working.
Yeah, there's a deadline and I don't care where I'm throwing things. That's what happens to me. Then I have to go back and pick up. So, yeah, it's my lifestyle. It's what I do. It's full time. I used to make jewelry and I had fun with that. I made wire wrap jewelry. But the reason I started that is because years ago I would go set up at a craft fair, and try to get portrait commissions. And I wasn't paying my booth fee. So I need something little to sell so I can pay my booth fee. So I started trying to wire wrap, and I taught myself to wire wrap. And I did that for several years. And then I had, as long as I'm chatting along, I had sort of a brief interlude in my life where I decided I was going to write music. And I wrote 60 songs and I figured out how to record them and made CDs of them. And I actually went to a Christian Women's Club luncheon once and sold a bunch of them. So that took a little of attention away from my art for a while. I was a little obsessed with it. I couldn't quit. Then all of a sudden, boom, I'm done. I don't write music anymore. So I don't know why. It was just this thing I did. Yes.
I'm sorry I'm late, so I might have,
It's
I
okay.
missed a lot of your story, but tell me where you're from and where is your studio? And,
Okay.
I know you do a lot of portraits. Do you lean towards that or, do you
Okay.
come in and out of?
I've been doing portraits for like 30 years. I've got pretty good at it, but I also raised my prices to the point where I don't do it very often. And that's okay with me, because I got a little tired of it, a little bit burned out. So that's what I decided to do, is price myself out of a job there.
So
But
do you-
I still will do one.
do you do it real life or do you do from photographs?
From photos, yeah.
From photos?
Yeah.
Okay.
And where my studio is upstairs in my house, and it's just down the street. We live on Fetterman and Veteran
Oh, okay.
Street.
Didn't realize that. Oh. Do you invite, do you have your artwork hanging there, or do you just usually?
I usually don't let people in my studio. It's hazardous.
Oh, okay.
But I always dream that maybe one day I'll have an open studio and I can have people come over. I don't know. I haven't had the courage to do that yet. But,
They're beautiful, and I love your colors. You're
thank you.
beautiful. And I'm sorry, I'm seeing the horse, the Pegasus. Did you already talk about? your
No, I didn't talk about that.
Inspiration for that one?
I didn't talk about that. That painting has morphed a lot. I started with the cowgirl on his back. And the more detail I put in the cowgirl, the smaller she got. And I'm like, she's too tiny. I just don't even want to put her on there anymore. So I thought, I'll just put wings on him, make him a Pegasus. So that's kind of what happens. You know, I'll do a really messed up job and then I'll just paint over it, try something new over it.
So is it an oil? I can't tell from the.
I started in acrylic and ended with oil. So I call it an oil.
Oh,
Thank you. I kind of like the way it finally turned out.
not in the tour yet, so. Caught my eye.
Yeah, do you guys have any other questions about any of these other paintings? There's some lions over there. Did you all see those?
Yeah, that's cribbage in there, but if you're quiet, they're kind of serious, but you can go look at the art.
Yeah. I like to paint big cats, but the only ones that are popular around here are the mountain lions. And, you know, nobody really wants African cats here. So I did do a mountain lion painting. And he's hanging in Expressions if you ever get over to Sheridan and to see the Expressions Gallery.
Where is that?
Okay, do you know where the Sheridan Inn is? Okay, if you go to that, if you're on that street where the Sheridan is in and you just go down the street, there's a little mini mall right there and that's where the Expressions Gallery is. What other, you know, anybody else know what's over there? Sagewood, yes, Sagewood North
I know that.
is right beside it. Yeah. It's a nice gallery. She has so many beautiful things in there, but she's got my cats. And I did a mountain lion with her cubs. The cubs were a second thought. Maybe it's boring, you know, I need to add some interest, so I added cubs. I like the way it turned out.
Expressions is on 645 Broadway.
645 Broadway. Thank you, Kathy. Anything else?
Is that Mary Tanner's frame shop or?
That's Wanda Kearns. She owns that. Great gal. She's been so good to work with. Yes?
Besides portraits, do you do commission photos, pictures? Other kinds of scenes?
I would, yeah. I don't very often.
You can have that.
Yeah, I've done a lot of pet portraits, but landscapes, I do, you know, I always say I'm not a landscape artist. But when I look back at the artwork I've done, I've got kind of a collection of landscapes. For some reason, I still don't think I'm a landscape artist, but I have done quite a few. They do call to me once in a while, and I gotta do it, you know, because they're so beautiful, landscapes.
So did your dad paint much then?
He just did it for fun.
Yeah, he said he started that one and
Yeah.
finished it. He finished it.
That's the 9 hole at Pebble Beach. So
Oh,
Pebble Beach Golf Course, yeah.
he was a
Golfer.
golfer.
oh, okay.
So we took a picture with his son.
He passed away. Yeah. He just did it for fun. He'd stay up late at night and do it.
Did you grow up watching him paint then? Was that from drawing?
You know, I don't think I can actually point to him as my inspiration, but because I had a pencil in my hand in church every Sunday, you know, to keep me quiet. Yeah. And I would draw. I have this one little drawing of the organist, Mrs. Frost, that I had drawn. It kind of looked like her. I was only like 7. There's an artist, let's see, what's his name? I think his name, Toby Burr. Have you heard of Toby Burr? Okay, when we lived in Sheridan, I was about 7 years old, and Toby Burr was a teenager. And he did a picture, he did a pencil drawing of Christ and gave it to our family. And I was just so impressed. That really, you know, inspired me as a young artist who can I agree. I wasn't a prodigy by any means, you know, I just really had a drive to draw, you know. And I think that a lot of people, don't, you know, they have the talent to draw, they don't want to. I wanted to. And so I think you have to have both, you know, you have to have the ability, a little spark of ability, and then that drive makes you hone a skill. And I think it's that way with anything, you know, you might teach a kid piano, but if they don't want to learn and, you know, keep doing it, they won't get good at it. And that's the way with just anything that we do. You just have to have that drive. And I did. That's my favorite thing to do. Yes.
Where did you go to college for art?
Yeah, I went to graphic art in Spokane, Washington for graphics. Yeah, that was the extent.
Oh.
Yeah. And, you know, I didn't even finish that program. Like a stupid young woman, I decided I would get married instead. And my teacher just hung their heads, you know. So stupid. But kids do that. But, you know, that first job I had in Phoenix, you know, I don't know if you were here when I was talking about that, was because I didn't want to do anything else, you know. And I knew I had to get a job because my husband was going to college and he said, you gotta get a job. And here I was in this great big city, Phoenix, and I didn't want to work in retail, you know. I am not gifted with math. And maybe that's why I am, you know, I decided to do art because it's compensation for my other inabilities, you know. I think a lot of people who really hone a skill are compensating for their feeling of inadequacy in other areas. But I came home after trying a retail job and I was in tears, and I got one of those great big newspapers and I started going through the want ads, you know, for jobs. And I found this ad from Keys Art Service, and it said, you have to have some experience. We want an experienced graphic artist. Well, I maybe had one thing that I did outside of, you know, my school, but I was desperate enough to go and give them my portfolio from college, you know. And so they got away with paying me very little. But it was a cool job. I liked it. Because I was in the line art department, which is where I wanted to be. I learned how to use pen and ink. I loved pen and ink anyway. You guys have gotten me talking.
Let's go small feet.
Any more questions?
Do you have upcoming shows, things going on?
Well, every year I'm involved in this fundraiser over in Warland that is really a kick because they do a quick draw. And anymore, all the artists aren't really starting from scratch. You know, they call it quick finish. So they'll bring an almost done painting and just do a little thing, and there you go. And they'll auction that off, you know. So they get enough money, so they're not complaining about that. They want good art for their auction. So it's fun though. You know, it was amazing to me what those people were willing to pay, you know, for something that you did in an hour. But like I said, most of these are quick finishes, so that the artists were, you know, most way done before they, you know, spent the last hour. But one painting I remember a couple of years ago went for $10,000 on an auction, and then was it last year, the year before, I painted a buffalo that was running towards you, and it was just full of action. And that one was really a thrill to see that one go up to $7,500. And that was like, whoa, you're kidding me.
And what was that for? What organization?
Oh, that is their the Washakie Museum over there in Warland. they have a Rotary Club and they raise money that way. And I get to sell some things too. I can bring 5 things to show. But, you know, that's kind of an exclusive thing because everybody has to pay to get in and stuff. So it's just all fundraising. But as far as shows coming up, I will be at the Playhouse with my cards coming up next week. And I will also be down at Bomber Mountain when they have their fall festival. I signed up for that. And there's a thing in Casper that I'm just putting my mugs and my cards in. It's at the mall. It's a pre-Christmas thing. But as far as one-man shows, this is about it. This is a nice one-man show, one artist show. I really appreciate it.
We've had a lot of comments, well, we had our art auction a couple weeks ago and Karen donated a piece for that and that was great. The turnout, I think we'll do it a little earlier next year in the day and have it over by dark. But overall, we did really great and we had 70 pieces, so we had lots of artists who donated and, artists are generally just generous and we just love what we do and appreciate it when other people appreciate it. We don't want to work for free, but and that's the thing, it doesn't always feel like work then, but it is, it's a piece of our hearts. And
Yeah,
it's one of a kind, if somebody's touched it. It's not the same as AI art and those things now. Kids these days, that's all they're gonna know how to do.
Yeah.
If they're not drawing with a pencil. And that's the thing, is you don't have to be rich to even start making art,
And when I see all my art together in a place like this, all the time that I spend on each one of those comes back to me. And an interesting thing that your mind will do too, and I don't know if you've noticed this, that happens with your brain, is that when you're doing something, like here's what happens to me. Let's say one day I'm painting on my whatever, and I'm listening to some music. And then the next day when I go back to that painting, guess what pops into my head? The music. The same thing I was listening to before. Because your brain makes those connections. And I have connections to all of these pieces. Whatever I was thinking about, whatever I was doing, it's like, for me, it's in it. It's part of it.
Yeah, thanks Karen for coming and sharing your art and your story behind it. And after the auction, the walls were really barren here for a week or so, and that's how you know what is art does make an impact, because if it's missing, you notice. And we do this every 2 months now, so the first Friday of every month, with weather permitting and those things, but every other month, sorry, I said every month. December then would be our next one, the first Friday of December. And he's a Gillette artist, Chris Amon. Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah, he's got a lot of whimsical things too. And he did, a few years ago, I saw a show of his that was toys. So I thought that would be a good Christmas show because it's kind of, again, whimsical and colorful, and it brings joy to us and warms up the walls here. And if it just sits and stays the same, it's also not as impactful because, I've seen it. And I think art is like stopping to smell the roses. So
I painted a mural on my wall at home. I painted a mural on my wall at home, and it's a mountain scene, but I make fake bricks, I just painted it with a sponge, and it looks like bricks. So there's this arch and the whole corner, and I was sitting there a while back, and I go, my mind thinks that's real. If I don't,
It's like magic.
I know, you get to thinking, that's real, that's a brick wall. Because that's the way I see it every day, it looks real to me. So it's funny.
Well, thank you, Karen, and make sure you see the artwork again. If you didn't get to see what's in there, you just can walk around the cribbage players and make sure that you get to see it all. And what was my last thought? Oh, there's a sign-up sheet in case you walked in early, just to make sure that we got you down as far as our numbers go. And participation around here is important. We do have a lot going on, but
And I have some business cards with me if you want a business card.
business cards. And
There,
we can get you in touch with her too after the fact if you end up thinking you might need to.
I have several different designs.
That's always fun too. Little piece of our art. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming and.
Now we can talk. Yeah, 1 o'clock. We're in Louis up there.
Two people, we both.